In 1975, a group of visionary Black nurses came together to build a space of belonging, leadership, and service. These are the voices of the women who built, shaped, and carried the legacy of the Black Nurses Association of the Greater Washington, D.C. area.
Can you state your name?
Janice Johnson.
I am Lillian Wade. I'm Cynthia Edwards.
My name is Madeline Belcher.
My name is Aubrey Adams.
My name is Judy Jourdain Earl.
Full name is Karen Sibyl Skinner.
They began with nothing but determination, a shared vision, and each other.
To have so many legends and nurse icons that were in this organization, I was so impressed that I would actually get nervous when I was sitting next to them. I would say, oh my gosh, I cannot believe I am sitting next to, Dr. Pierre Broadnex, Dr. Barbara Hatcher. I'm like, these are nurse icons that I had heard about, in my nursing studies and throughout my career. I was just so impressed with them. And I said at that time, I said, this has got to be documented in some kind of way.
In a time when Black nurses were often overlooked and denied opportunities, they built a chapter rooted in courage, advocacy, and unwavering commitment to community. These are the voices of the women who shaped the foundation, lifted their neighborhoods, and carried forward a legacy that still guides us today.
Here's a little girl from North Carolina going to New York, 1974. I had a dormitory room, never lived in a dormitory because I lived at home and went to class. And I go to my classes, and there I met some nurses. They introduced themselves as members of the Black Nurses Association. Never heard of Black Nurses Association. They said their job was to see that I completed my course. I completed my degree at the Columbia Presbyterian University of Nursing. I got a job at the Washington Hospital Center. Here I am in Chocolate City. I'm still looking for the Black nurses. I found the AKA nurses. I found the Delta nurses, but no Black nurses. So I went to the first Black Nurses Conference in 1975. I told them there was no Black nurses in D.C., and I was upset because this was Chocolate City at this time. They said, well, you go back and start one. We became the first chapter in Washington, D.C.
I went to a seminar that the dean of the School of Nursing at Case Western Reserve University was giving. During the course of her dialogue, I stood up and challenged some of the things that she was saying. So at the end of the session, Dr. Mary Harper came over to me and tapped me on the shoulder, and then she invited me to a gathering she was having at her home. So I went to Dr. Harper's home, and they were discussing whether they were going to form an organization. And I sat there really impressed and incredulous about that these women were talking about this, what I considered a rather radical idea to form their own organization. Well, they took a vote, and of course, I voted yes, and that was the beginning of the National Black Nurses Association.
They started with nothing but determination, a vision, and each other. They built this chapter during a time when Black nurses were often overlooked and sometimes denied opportunities.
Well, I first became involved after I had attended a caucus of Black nurses at the American Nurses Association convention, and that motivated me to come back to D.C. to see if we could get a chapter started. And with some of the other members, that didn't happen. We were able to meet several times before we could really get to the point where we elected officers and moved on from there.
Here I am. I knew nothing about starting a nursing organization. We got 100 nurses to sign up to be members of the Black Nurses Association. I went and presented that. They said, now you need a charter and a bylaws. Not knowing what a charter and a bylaws was, my nursing colleagues got it together and we completed our chapter charter and our bylaws. We even applied for incorporation status in Washington, D.C.
During the process of doing further organizing, half of the group were members of the first board of directors of NBNA. And I was in the second group, the other half of the group, and became a board member then. I had never served on a board, was almost clueless as to what a board really would do function-wise. I was really the recipient of the mentoring. Dr. Betty Williams and Dr. Loran Sams both were my mentors. Dr. Betty Smith Williams told me how to do the Constitution and Bylaws Committee. I became chair of that committee. Again, I hadn't done anything with any of that. So it was just an example of the mentoring and leadership that was shared with me in that process.
Despite barriers, they shaped programs that transformed communities, one family, one neighborhood at a time. Strong leaders stepped forward and carried the chapter through the decades, protecting its mission.
One of the things that make me most proud is we did do community service. From 1979, I was the chairperson of the community service committee, and we were quite involved in several community activities. We partnered with American Heart Association, Diabetes Association. We were involved at several churches on a regular basis where we would take blood pressure and provide education. For a while, we also did glucose and cholesterol. We were also in partner with Washington Hospital Center, and once a month we would also do blood pressures there. And one thing that happened there that really stood out was there was an employee whose blood pressure was elevated, and she didn't want to think that it was elevated. So I just suggested to her to go to their employee health center, to check again if she felt better doing that. I had also suggested that, she follow up with her physician. When I came back the next month, she came to seek me out to say that and to thank me because she was diagnosed as having hypertension and she was started on medication. We decided at a board meeting to have a Nurse of the Year, and we didn't have money. And then we were looking at a place. We didn't have money to really get a hotel, so I worked at St. Elizabeth. We were able to get a room at the nursing education department, but we planned a program. We selected a Nurse of the Year. So in 1981, we had our first Nurse of the Year program. From that one in 81 to where we are now is as different in day and night. So you said that was back in the day when we started out like that. But then it had, advanced, and I'm sure other people will talk about that.
My aunt was a nurse, and she was active with the DC Black Nurses Association. So when I completed college, she said, you need to join. Whatever my aunt said, I did. As a nurse, you hear about the board, because the board is a group that licenses you, and they can discipline you. And for some reason, I didn't think there were Black people on the Board of Nursing, and why not? We're in D.C., they should be Black, but there were. So I met Ethel Holland Dyson. She was on the Board for Nursing. And I said, well, how do you do that? I mean, how do you become a member? And I said, I want to be on board. So I hounded them, and they helped me apply, and I became a member. And I had been a member since I graduated from college. I started working with the Black Nurses Association because for me, it was hounded in me. And I need to say I went to North Carolina A&T State University. I'm a proud Aggie, and we were told that you need to participate in your professional organization. And then once I heard about the Black Nurses Association, I became a member of that.
What was the hardest part of your journey?
Well, running back and forth through this hospital, which at this time I don't know is illegal, because the hospital center had a union of nurses, DC Nurses Association. But I had a head nurse, Ada King, who allowed me to do that, and she became a member of the Black Nurses Association. I was elected president of the Black Nurses Association, and I really didn't want to be the president. Come to find out that I was elected president because if the organization failed, then it would be my fault, not knowing that I kept on going. I didn't care. But I wanted them to say the Black Nurses Association would last longer than I would be president. I wanted it to last because it was a need. There was a need for somebody to look out for these Black patients that were in the hospital being treated by people who really didn't care. I had Lillian Wade, Barbara Baskerville, Claudine Linder. These people kept the organization going, and I just wanted it to last.
The legacy of Black Nurses Association of the Greater Washington, D.C. area lives in every nurse who dares to lead, advocate, and uplift our communities. These are the voices of the women who built, shaped, and carried the legacy.
I was invited by a coworker to the salute that we do now. I was just in such awe of the nurses in the room. I asked her, where did all these Black nurses come from? And how do I join this organization? She said, that's easy. You're a Black nurse, you're eligible to join. She nominated me for the Black Nurse of the Year. So in 2013, I received the Black Nurse of the Year. After I got that award, I said, well, I got to give back some kind of way. I became a vice president, and I was the vice president under Sonia Swayze, who was the president. Under Sonia's leadership, I learned a lot about Black nurses, about an organization in general. Later, I became the corresponding secretary. So as the corresponding secretary, I would put out all the correspondence. So I knew every nurse's name. I knew a lot about them, because I would send out, the emails, and I would call them. Back in the day, a lot of people didn't have emails. So I would, make my phone calls and talk to them. So I got to know the nurses very well. And I held that position for 8 years.
I was inspired to join the Black Nurses Association in 2010 by Janice Johnson when I first started working at Carroll Manor Nursing and Rehabilitation. I was an LPN. And I was also inspired because I wanted to be part of a community that reflected my values, my support, and growth that allows me to make a meaningful impact. I was mentored by Janice Johnson, Crystal Scott, and other members of the Black Nurses Association, and that support has truly shaped my path. I gained experience from other nurses that helped me grow not only in my skills, but also my confidence and purpose.
Do you believe that you are the future of the Black Nurses Association?
Yes, I've been in the Black Nurses Association since 2010. I've been a nurse for 20 years, and I believe that I am the future as the older generation is retiring and phasing out. And I'm here to stick around.
seeing people in leadership roles and having those people mentor you is very important. If you don't see it, you don't believe it could happen. A lot of what they do is the mentorship, and I think that's a key role of what the Black nurses do, is they will mentor their young. Nursing is very good at killing off their young, but I think Black nurses is good at supporting and mentoring. They give scholarships, but in addition to doing that, they also will mentor their young. We have a yearly luncheon. It's kind of a Black nurses reunion every year, but it's also a way to get to know other Black nurses, maybe people new in the area, and a way to connect with new members or new leaders and to reconnect with people you haven't seen in.
Their journey is the heartbeat of this organization, and their legacy lights the path forward.
Had a thing about not joining any organizations because I never liked selling tickets to anybody. So I overcame that by purchasing a whole table myself and then filling it with friends and donating the extra tickets to students. I was able to write recommendations for 2 nursing students from Howard to get scholarships from the national organization NBNA. One was able to get a $10,000 scholarship and the other one a $15,000 scholarship. I'm also proud to be able to join the community activities where we went to 2 different middle schools to donate toiletries, food, and different items. So those were some of the things that I, participated in.
Throughout my duration of being with the Black Nurses Association and going back to school, which I finished my doctorate in 3 weeks, the Black Nurses Association has given me a scholarship almost every year that I have been in school. The last one I received was $15,000. That alone made a tremendous difference in my academic success. I aspire to teach. I like to teach. I love to teach. I like to make sure that the nurses that are coming in are doing the right thing the first time. And I learned that piece from Janice Johnson, doing the right thing the first time. And I'm a stickler to it, and I stick by it. So I want to teach and educate the future nurses.
I think the biggest impact, and continues to be the biggest impact, is the advocacy role. Very important to advocate for our people, that we as Black nurses can really be a very significant voice in speaking up to try to address the continued discrimination and racism that exist in our country and therefore still exist in the healthcare system, still impacts individual nurses, etc.
The story of BNAGWDCA lives through the women who lived it.
Well, I'm very proud because it's been over 50 years since that organization started and continues. I still think there will be a place for the Black nurse because they have interest in taking care of all patients, especially patients of color.
I would like to say that I enjoyed nursing all of the years that I worked. And I would highly recommend that those that are coming behind us will continue to carry out some of the things that we have done. I would stress education, that they need to be well educated so they can compete in the market. I would also recommend that they be compassionate and not get caught up in all of the technology. That I know everything today is technology, and sometimes the patient is forgotten because of the technology.
When I retired, my staff gave a retirement party for me. So many people came to that and talked about how I had impacted their career. In fact, the person that ended up becoming the chair of our board just before I left came in and said, "I applied to be on the board because of you." I heard that from a number of people. Someone would call and ask for help, which is what I thought I was supposed to do, what everybody did, but I guess people didn't necessarily do that. But to hear from people like that and others, it hit me that, I did make an impact.
Today, we honor the women whose courage, service, and unstoppable determination built this chapter and strengthened our community.
Well, this moment means that we'll have some written history or televised history to show, where the nursing organization started from and how it evolves. It's nice to see so many young nurses coming in now that are stepping up to take leadership positions to, carry on the organization.
I will say that if I can do it, anybody can. I had a lot of struggles throughout this time going back to school, being a single mom and trying to get that support to finish school. Like I said before, if I can do it, anybody can. It's a struggle, but it can be done. It's possible and it's achievable. And build that team and have that connection with the other nurses. I've worked in DC since 2010, and it's about who you know. I want to build a legacy.
Last closing question. Black Nurses Association of Greater Washington. Legacy. What does legacy mean to you?
Is this a single word, or can I do much? Single word is I still support advocacy, and for the reasons that I've already outlined. There will always be a need for the Black Nurses Association. We are the best advocates for our people. We understand the culture and the needs, and we are the best advocates for our own folks.
So then I met this person called Daryl Harris. I met him through another job that I had. And I was telling Daryl one day, I said, Daryl, I really want to do something. I really want to do some type of legacy project that we can document our members. And that Daryl Harris was like, let's do it. We just conspired and figured out how we're going to do this. Well, how are we going to do this? Well, I don't know, Daryl. You tell me. How are we going to do it? I know the people, but there are so many legends in our organization. It was really hard to determine how do we start. So I said, well, let's start with the founders. That's the foundation of the whole Black Nurses Association. So we started with our founders, and we are blessed to have 5 of the original 7 founders still living. Let's start with the founders. And then after the founders, let's look at some of our major contributors. We have major contributors that support our organization and have supported our organization for years. We have the Margaret A. Pemberton Scholarship, and Ms. Pemberton has donated a lot of money to not only the Black Nurses of Greater Washington, D.C. area, but the national chapter, and she's always been a staunch supporter of us. Anytime I would ask Margaret for anything, she would willingly write a check. Okay, that's the way she is. She's been a member since 1970. I said, well, we have to recognize these contributors. We have to. But it was really hard trying to determine, well, how do we start? Who do we start with? And this is just phase 1, because this history has got to be documented. It has to be documented with quality and dignity. And this is how we are doing it. We're starting here, but who knows when we're going to finish, how we are going to finish. But it's one thing I do know, it will be finished, and it will be documented, and it will go down in history.